Yes, please.
Okay. Call this meeting to order. Then we have a forum. And Sam is going to try to join us. He's at home letting him. So first item is public comment. There's no one here. I don't see anyone on chat. So let's move into updates from legal counsel.
Not a lot to update you on, but a couple of significant things. I put in front of you the PDPA number. So that is the number that will allow us to get our bank account now. And what that is it's a number that the State Banking Commission assigns to you so that they can track your investments in your bank accounts to make sure that you're not making too much money, believe it or not, or that they're not in a safe place where they minimize the risk so that you don't lose taxpayer money. So that's the official letter, and Sylvia has that. Whenever she goes to the bank, they'll want to see a copy of that, and we'll be on our way. The other item in front of you is the Boulder tax distribution statement. So that's a monthly statement that will come out of the treasurer's office, and you can see there's future taxes and there's current month taxes, and then year to date you've got $12,730,000 in taxes collected already. The treasurer has made almost $200,000 off of you. A couple of other items on here. The SOT is specific ownership tax, and that is your share of the taxes that are paid on your license plates. So it's all divided among the county, among certain entities, and this is your, I don't know what your portion of that is, but $317,000 already pretty good. The PILT, the PILT is a payment in lieu of taxes. So there is somebody who has cut a deal with the county to pay something in lieu of taxes, and that's what those revenues are. Then you have the treasurer's fee. And then this abatements entry. Those are people who have protested their taxes and won, and their taxes were abated. So that's a number that you're going to get 1,563 less. You have right now less than you should have, except because somebody successfully protested. But next year, when we do your mill levy, we'll do an abatement levy, and you'll get, if that becomes significant, you'll be able to recover that next year. So that's it on that statement, unless you have any questions.
So just adding this up, for 5/12 through the year, this looks to be about $13 million. So is it decrease throughout the year?
Yeah.
We're ahead. And I guess since they only do 2 monthly draws or something, or 2 draws.
Yeah.
Okay.
But remember too, you have, when you get your property tax bill, you can pay it 50%.
In May,
50% in June.
Right.
June
So
15th.
So this month, you'll get another big jump. And then throughout the year, it'll kind of trickle in as people are late.
okay. So I see what you're saying.
And by mid-November, you'll be at 99%, 98%. That's something really goes so
What is the total at the bottom?
on the right-hand side, that's the total for this month.
Oh, okay.
Should be over.
Yeah, it would be a lot easier to read, wouldn't it?
Just want to make sure I was not misunderstanding.
So that's the money that the treasurer has right now that he wants you to get out of his office as soon as possible.
And Sylvia will have a recommendation on bank next week. It'll be a big topic. Meeting next week, financial policy.
Other than that, in terms of legal matters, you are now up on the Division of Local Governments site. It's the Department of Local Affairs for the state of Colorado. And if you go in there, there's something called the DLG. If you go into the DLG website, it's called the local government that's LSI. So going for that, and there's a A through Z on the bottom. Get the B, and you can work your way into Boulder. We're posting documents up there fairly frequently that you're doing. So the state has those. Ultimately, your audits will be in there. Budgets.
Can you give that website again, please, Tim?
It's the Colorado Division of Local Governments in the Department of Local Affairs. When you get to the DLG, look for something, I think it says ILS. It's up along the top. It'll take you to this local government information website.
Okay. Great, thank you.
I think that's about it for right now. I'm going to get the status reports going again. This week was kind of consumed by the I'll get that going again shortly.
So are we going to take up the insurance tonight, or is that something we need to
Yeah,
do?
that's something for the future. I thought about whether there's anything we can do about that right now. I think there really isn't. Once we transfer the funds over from the treasurer, you'll have to be bonded. To do the bonding, we'll just ask for errors and omissions policy at the same time. But right now, there's not even really any errors or omissions. So once you have the money, then maybe. At the moment, we're just kind of swimming around in the pool, trying to figure out where you're next.
Okay, great. All right. Well, then I guess we're ready for the main event here.
All right, well, you all have a copy of the library director's contract draft. There were a couple of changes made this afternoon, but none of them were substantive. David has had a chance to review it. And, go ahead and discuss it if you want. We can walk through it. John.
Well, just first a question, has the city attorney's office seen the changes from today? Great, I assume that's going to be up to today. So what do you think, folks? Do you want to walk through it?
That might be helpful.
Yes.
Page one is just the recital, things that have brought us here. And then on page two, you have agreement section 1. So engagement as director of the Boulder Public Library District. So this becomes effective when you approve it and sign it, and David signed it. You are employing him under your powers under the statute. So if you look at item 1E, that's his employment. Statute 249109C is a list.
What page are you on? I'm sorry.
Second page.
Are you in the IGA?
I thought it's attached to the agenda.
Oh, they're separate.
Okay, I got the contract. Okay,
Look at one more page.
yeah, yeah, okay,
It's here.
yeah. I'm just, didn't read, I got it.
So under employment there, that statute just lists all of your powers if you're interested in seeing that. So you would be employing your library director, which would be David. And then item 2 talks about the transition period. So that's the period now where we don't really have a library, but we've got an entity that has money. David's salary is going to be paid by the city as it always has been. And he's going to remain as the city's library director and our library director. He'll serve in this communications facilitator role between the two entities, passing information back and forth. Then we have item D, which the city specifically wanted. It will be excluded from all of our executive sessions and all of the city's executive sessions, but can participate in the public session. So the reason for the exclusion from the executive session is we'll be talking about the IGA, negotiating leases and purchases. And they don't want
transitional period is defined as just until we sign the final IGA or whatever we consider the final.
Yep, so the final IGA will state the end of this year. Then during the post-transition period, David will become only your library district director.
Sorry, I just want to go back to that comment. As you see this, the final IGA we will execute prior to employees transferring, or will it all occur at the same time?
It'll be prior.
Okay, so there will be a period, I guess, after we execute the final, where we'll have to understand his employment, and maybe he could be in our executive session.
Yeah.
Then? Okay.
So there will be a period when the final IGA is signed, there will be a period of implementing it.
Yeah, okay, so that will probably be addressed in the final IGA.
Yeah.
This transition period.
Yeah, and there's so many things that can happen.
Second.
You know, I was using Fort Collins as an example. They got along so well with the city that they're still under the IGA because part of the implementation was they used the HR department, they used the procurement department of the city, and then the city just charges them back on an hourly basis for that. So it works out very well. And we could end up with some of that too.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, like, that period after we sign the IGA.
Yeah.
And then one other question, after the IGA is signed, David will still continue in the library director position for the city until the employees are.
Yeah, it's all. And then item 3 on page 3 is the post-transition period. That's when we become our library district director only. And this was just I think this contract may have come from either Boulder or Range. And then at Visage did some. But it's basically just listing kind of the duties that you want your library director to perform, setting out the terms of his agreement. It's a 1-year contract that automatically renews, and an opportunity for you to change his salary. Johnny commented this morning on item M about the foundation, that it's completely independent, but they would work with the foundation as well. Compensation for at least the first period would be the same as what the city is providing at that time.
So back to item M, so how will that be changed? Will that be strike?
A red line here, it now reads to collaborate with the Boulder Public Library Foundation in establishing goals and priorities and actively participate in fundraising for the benefit of the library.
Can you read that again?
Yeah, to collaborate with the Boulder Public Library Foundation in establishing goals and priorities and actively participate in fundraising for the benefit of the library.
So can I ask David a question at this point, or do you want to just go first? So has that been in your job description with the city to actively participate in fundraising?
Yep.
Okay.
We'll do that.
Do you hold a seat on the board of the foundation?
I do not. The board of library. Here's asked. An understanding that I would do it, so the way it works is I meet with actually funders. I don't do the ask. But yeah, I've been doing that for basically 10 years. Yeah, I've been doing that for 10 years.
But you don't have a seat on the board, on the foundation?
I do not.
Okay. You're not a board member.
I kind of have like a higher level question about the contract. Is this what contracts look like in governmental agencies? Because in my experience, I've never seen a contract lay out all of the duty, every single type of duty comprehensively in the employment contract. It is, it is in the job description to which people apply. But I wonder if we are doing, so the first question is this common practice? And then I guess the second question is, do we need to then over include every activity we expect of David? Because this list is not, it's not just representative, it is the list.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Jen, to answer your first question, this is, we have a lot of contracts that are much broader and do have a job description. This has become more popular
Okay.
because it allows the board to, an easy way to evaluate the director at the end of the year. But it's not a necessary form. Change it however you want. There are, if you look at this listing, most of them are pretty broad. It's not a description of exactly what has to be done. It's a description of what things need to be addressed.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough. I just noticed there was like some more specific language in the, the attached city library director description, because
Yeah.
that role is different. And so I didn't know which of these, I guess I didn't know if these are supposed to be complementary or if one is supposed to replace the other, that kind of thing.
And the only reason the city job description is attached is because David's going to be doing both of these jobs at
Right.
some point. So, and that's what he needs to do for the city. And then for us, it'll be more flexible until he becomes the director. And at that point, we can do the contract however you want.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Actually, we can do it however you want now, but this is wonderful. So the compensation will continue as it is with the city until you decide to change it.
Can I go back to Pete in preparing the agenda for each meeting? Is that what's going to be, is that a change in our practice then? Because I think you've been responsible for preparing.
Well, that's because we haven't formally had staff.
This is post-transition.
Yeah, this is post-hiring him. When he's on board,
No, when he's on board, he would do this.
No, but it's
Yeah.
post,
This whole section is after.
after the IGA.
right.
Okay.
It's not.
But no, as soon as he's hired and he can actually direct staff to do things, I
Okay,
imagine
I
that
meant
the
during this
actual
interim time.
preparation
This
of
time.
the agenda
Yeah,
will
okay.
shift
From that
over
section.
there
Yeah, no, I didn't
Okay.
notice.
Okay,
happily.
okay.
Item D at the bottom of page 4, the vacation, sick leave, and holidays. David's position is not as an employee, so you can have him subject to the employee manual and all of those things or not. So it's up to you. For this draft, I just put in there that he'll be subject to that. He'll have the same vacation pay, the same sick leave. But typically what happens is over time, the director kind of grows out of that and gets more benefits, more, but they'll be addressed in different contracts as you move forward.
And that's something I assume that we could address in the employment package. Just go back and revise this if we do something different in the employment package when it's created.
Yes, exactly. And you're gonna be updating this every year anyway, to change the salary. Addressing what needs to be addressed. So at the end of this draft, he's under the same retirement benefits, same insurance coverage, which we don't even know what that's gonna be yet. And then there's some reimbursements that are unique to him. Conference attendance, registration fees, business meals, mileage, that kind of thing. The termination provision in these always becomes important because I threw 180 days in here because if David decides to leave, you need 180 days desperately to get someone else. So it's reciprocal. There's no, this doesn't deal with any kind of termination pay. But yeah, you deal with that at the time you want, or put something in here. And then the rest is just miscellaneous kind of legal coding.
I just have one quick question. And I'll ask this question by like knocking on wood. So let's say, for example, like when someone is working, like working for two employers concurrently, what happens if there's like a workman's comp scenario?
That's a good question. I think the answer would be it would depend on who he was working for at the time, which could be difficult to determine.
Right, okay. Okay, so the way to resolve that is just, David, don't have any.
But
It happened to David,
We'll wrap him in
Don't get on
bubble
any,
wrap.
don't fix any leaks.
right.
Maybe the bathrooms too. Just kidding.
But I think that since the city right now, and will be under the interim IGA paying his benefits.
Yeah.
UTA and all that other stuff, that a claim would go through the city.
Yeah.
So we might be, I don't know if there's a reimbursement from the city to the insurer maybe on the hook for that, but yeah.
Well, and ultimately, I think, we may end up contributing to all of those benefits.
Right.
Yeah. I'm not sure how it's going to turn out yet.
To be determined.
So that's David's contract. We published for you to be able to sign this contract next week. You can't do it yet because we had that 14-day application window. That's been done. But next meeting, you're free to do that. In the meantime, David, do you have any comments?
I'm so pleased. No, I haven't made any changes. It's not at all surprised. So it's good.
So should we plan on, do we need to do a resolution on this next time to approve the contract and then sign it?
Yeah, you can do it with a motion if you want, or we can do it from a resolution.
Okay.
And if everybody's good with that, then we'll get that to bed. Next week.
Very cool.
Great. That went
Do you
pretty smooth.
do you anticipate any objection from the city side at all?
No, we've talked about it, and at least in the legal department, my attitude was his employment with us is our business. So all you need to know is that he's got a second job, and then we need to coordinate, things like communications, which are done in the IGA. So I don't expect there'll be any comments on this.
Okay,
In fact, I wasn't gonna even send it to him.
all right.
Your employment contract, your direct.
Well, that's probably worth checking with them, David. I don't know what they're thinking they're gonna put in the packet for council. Council may have some questions about the duty role, so if its contract isn't there, which is fine by me, we should make sure there's some memo explaining it. Maybe the IGA is enough. But
It's covered in the temporary IGA, right?
yeah, it is covered in that.
Yeah, so I really.
Okay.
I
Yeah,
don't know how they intend to do it. They plan to do it on consent, or if they're gonna have a discussion.
Citizen consent, so.
yeah, it'll be a consent.
Yeah.
And I think if they do want to have something that the city attorney frequently does do memos to council that are not public information or confidential. So if there is something like that, then they will have that already.
Okay, great. Just always alert for those little questions that come up.
So I just had a question back to Sylvia's comment or question about workers' comp. And so I just wondered if, does the city have, do they cover their employees like a disability policy or something like that? Is
They
that
do
in the
it
package?
long-term and short-term.
Okay. Okay. I just wondered, and then, is there any need to make mention of workers' comp or any shared responsibility in the interim agreement?
I don't think so, because this is basically an independent contract to contract. And it's pretty detailed for that kind of contract, but it's a contract where you're hiring David for his skills, what areas you need to have covered. So workers' comp shouldn't be an issue. Is that true?
I mean, it's, from my knowledge of it, I think it's mandated by law, so I don't think it's something that, like, even if we didn't write it down, it's still going to be, we're still required to have the coverage, I believe.
Yeah.
But we have it, it's part of his current city
Mhm.
benefits. Yeah, so.
Yeah, and it says that he'll continue to receive all salary and benefits from the city, so.
I mean, and that's mandated as an
Mhm.
employer anyway.
It was the situational thing, right? If something were to happen, it's sort of the shared responsibility of that or something like that. But that's not needed. It's just,
He's gonna be covered under theirs. It's hard to see where in the interim period, anything you're doing is kind of be for everybody. But if it wasn't, then you're a contract employee.
okay. Okay, good.
We'll get that on the next agenda.
Wonderful.
IGA time.
To the next one, you each have a copy of the IGA, the interim IGA. It starts out again with the recitals. And then the term, I put in here that it's effective when it's signed, and it runs no later than December 31st, or until the permanent IGA sets a date. So our hope is, I think, to have the permanent IGA in place by November. And it will say, whatever it's gonna say about this. October. Obligations and responsibilities of the city. So 2.1, they will continue to operate the library system the way they have and to fund it the way they have. The library finances, they will collect all of the fines and fees and those things and put them into the library fund. In the permanent IGA, I don't know if the city has any development fees that are paid to support the library. We do. Okay, so all of those will come into the permanent IGA. Those funds will go into the library fund, and the library fund will go to the library. So over here. Fines and fees, they'll continue to collect those and spend them if they need to, or accumulate them for the library district. Then we have section 2.4, which is about David's contract. So the first introductory paragraph talks about how everybody, the city and we know we need his assistance to get through this, and it's critical. The reason for that is because the city's got to get past these rules of conduct that they have, which are then followed up here. So 2.4.1, services as director of the city library. And David will continue as the city library director. Services to the district, 2.4.1.2. Mr. Farnan may serve as director of the Boulder Public Library District under contract to convey information and knowledge to the district and begin the work of developing programs, policies, budgets, and employee transitions to the district. That's really what we need during the interim period. Compensation will continue through the city as it has in the past under 2.4.13. And then 2.4.2 is really intended to cover the city's concerns about David attending executive sessions. So he'll be excluded from those. But under his employment contract, he'll provide you with whatever information you need for your executive session. So he just won't be in the executive session. 2.4.3, approval of employment outside of the city. That's a provision that the city has to have in order to allow David to have another job. And hopefully, there'll probably be a lot of changes to that language. I'm not sure. We'll see how they. 2.4.4 is another city code of conduct issue that needs to be addressed. So they will address that.
Have they seen that language yet or not?
No, we talked about it, and David Gear sent me copies of these codes.
Okay.
And I kind of took the language from his email and massaged this. So there might be quite a few changes there, but
Okay.
we don't care.
It's theirs, yeah.
I guess we have the David's role defined. So we can contact city staff and we'll, under the interim period, is there other staff like that will have to do work for the district? Or is it, I mean, we're not gonna cover that in here or?
There's a section here that was added by.
2.5.
Oh, okay,
That talks about exactly that.
okay.
So those people who have knowledge and expertise that we don't have and David doesn't have, we can have access.
2.5.
I don't have a 2.5.
It's in the redlined version.
It's in that other one.
Ah,
Now
okay.
you have 2.5.
Okay, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Oh, thank you.
So many versions.
I'm like, wait a second. Thank you.
So that one, I'll just read it out loud here. And the Farnan will serve as a communications facilitator between the district and the city during the transition period. The city and the district shall be given full access to all information held or accessible to either that is relevant to the transition matters. The city will provide the Board of Trustees access to city and city library staff, subject matter experts through coordination with Farnan. That's probably the most important paragraph.
It is, and that's why I wonder about it being under like communications facilitation.
But what else would it be?
Transition facilitation.
Because it's more than communication. I mean, it's a big part of like sort of the intelligence, the operational, transition support or.
Well, I think transition support is addressed for us in the services to the district, conveying information and knowledge, and then beginning the work of developing programs, policies, budget, and employee transitions. And I think, based on our conversations with the city, it is really communication we're going to be having with them. They're giving us data, and they're making people available to us to do presentations and ask Q&A. I don't know if there's a better term than communications, but it does seem to
Well,
be that coordination of.
It doesn't seem like there's gonna be, it doesn't seem like until we get the final IGA signed, that any library staff will be doing actual transitional work, like maybe you'll probably start researching HR benefits and all that other stuff, but will we have other library staff do that? Will they be able to do?
I was thinking of Jennifer Ferris has been in our meetings and like running our IT and that sort of thing. And we named David as the sole person working on this, but clearly she is as well. I don't know if does that present a problem
I think it
eventually?
does.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that the city was concerned about initially was David had gone to them and suggested that they're basically the whole LT, well, BPL LT work for us in this dual role, and that was going too far for them. So I think they're comfortable with Jennifer doing work. They're comfortable with Lisa in the city manager's office arranging things for us. I think they're comfortable with David directing people to work with IT, but they don't want it to be in a position where we're directing them. That's at least the way I read the situation with them. This is a sensitive point for them.
Okay, so Jennifer can be here, but we can't give her any directions.
David can give her direction. We can't.
Okay.
We can't
Well,
give direction
good.
to
To
anybody
anybody,
but
right.
David.
Okay.
Anybody but David. And that may be true even when we are operating as a full board with David working for us. I mean, our
Yeah.
job is not to give direction to staff.
Okay,
Can we
yeah,
can we direct David to find healthcare plan? And you would do that, I guess. And eventually you could sign a contract with a healthcare provider post-transition or something. Okay, that's what I'm like, or can you have library staff assist you with that task or, okay.
Yeah, so
I'm sorry, I'm just asking.
You know, the number of,
We have enough.
the number of staff that will be involved will be, it's not, it's a
Yeah,
handful.
5 or 6.
90% of the staff
Yeah,
are not involved
Right.
in this transition. They're watching, they can't wait until next week,
right.
but they're not involved in actually doing the work. Jennifer's heavily involved in it. There are other people who are involved in a specific area, which is an area of their expertise. And so they will be drawn in the same way that other city staff may be as an expert in that area to help answer questions. I think one of the places where we had kind of thought might be helpful was that, simply putting together agenda packets and meeting notes and stuff like that. That Celia Seaton, who I think many of you have met at this point, that probably won't happen until the IG is complete.
I have a question about 2.4.5.
Well, I still don't want to leave. I mean,
Oh,
I
sorry.
just still think that last sentence, the city will provide the Board of Trustees access to the city and city library staff, subject matter experts through coordination with Farnan. Like, that is just, like, in my head, like, it's beyond communication facilitation. Like, it's a totally separate.
Well, you could just delete communications, just put facilitation.
That's fine.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I get it.
okay.
There's probably a thing in here that says the headings are for informative purposes only and make no legal break, right? Oh, you took that out, okay. So, I have to leave. Just briefly, the meeting next week, are we having staff submit questions or?
Yeah, can we break to that for just a minute? Because I know Sylvia has to leave as well. So can we jump forward to the staff meeting for next week and what we had talked about as the tentative agenda for that? So it's 12 to 1:30. And what we had talked about was Nuria, I think, wants to come in and open it up, doing her, we are all looking for a seamless transition for you, and similar, the same tone that she sent out in the message that she sent to staff. I thought I would then dive in with, thanking staff for all their hard work, and they're the backbone of the library. And yes, indeed, we're all working towards a seamless transition. And then we've asked David to lay out the plan as we have developed it to develop the employment package. He's going to do a big printout with a timeline highlighting the areas where they have input. And then the notion was to throw it open for listening and for questions and answers to the extent we can give answers.
Yeah, I just mean if they submit questions beforehand, they can ask questions there, of course. It just might give us time to prepare answers. Like some of the answers maybe we don't know yet, right? But I don't know.
I think David can probably give us a pretty good summary of at least a lot of the questions.
You can come ready and with the answers already. I just don't want to be caught like flat-footed.
Sure, we can. We've been getting questions from.
Okay.
So we'll share the FAQs that we have already.
Yeah, I don't plan on talking, just so you know, unless.
And I just met, the questions, they've all centered around the same kind of stuff. You'll see.
And again, in a lot of cases, we're going to have to say, we don't have answers yet because we still have to develop the employment package. So.
I get it,
Yeah.
But we'll see how they go. I mean, they are in general a very direct bunch.
Yeah.
They're going to ask you what's on their mind, and I'm sure there are additional things that they have not brought up to this point that they may now be thinking of, because the last time we met was just after you guys had actually formed it, and we had a little staff meeting around just after formation, and there were several new questions which we responded to, and they're on the FAQ to the extent that we can as well.
Yeah, okay, I just want to make sure we can plan. I've been in these meetings many times and want to go, okay.
So do employees have an opportunity to, in advance of the meeting, to submit their questions to you, or could they be encouraged to do
We
that?
can ask them to do so. I don't
Okay,
know
it's like
that
there would
they-
be that piece and then like open mic, and so people could ask their questions on the floor of the room or through Zoom, right? They put them in the chat or,
And we'll have somebody there monitoring it to bring it up to
Okay.
you as well.
and
Yes,
then,
typically where they come.
I would just say to them, like, if they have one now, they want to answer that, then we can just prepare, and then otherwise, they can ask them on that day. It's fine with me.
Well, even if they submitted the questions in advance, we'd still be answering them there.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
It just so that like if there's something like we need to research or don't know, these people are all librarians and super smart, so they know all the facts and everything. So
All the hard questions you are not going to know the answer to.
that's probably right.
And
Yeah.
all the questions, a lot of the questions, just to let the cat out of the bag. So a lot of the questions are about the employment contract
Yeah.
and the benefits package that adheres to that.
Yeah.
And so they have specific questions about the precise kinds of vacation and earned time off that they will accrue. They have very precise questions about the protections that will be in the contract for their employment. So there are a lot of very direct questions that we will not have answers to get to here. Some of you are on the staffing committee, I think, or Jen is on the staffing committee. I mean, we'll be seeing some of those concerns early on,
Yeah.
before August, July.
And maybe it's like, hey, we see this as a concern and the board hears it and we'll take that into consideration.
Well, and again, I think our consistent message is we want this to be as seamless as possible.
Right.
Ideally, you walk in one door and out the other, and the only thing that changes is your badge.
That's
If we
helpful,
can
yeah.
improve on the benefits package, great, but that's at least what we're aiming for, is as seamless and smooth a transition as possible. That's Nuria's message, and I think that's ours too. And in
Great.
terms of questions after this, I assume we want them to keep directing questions through you, not to go directly to the trustees.
Of course, we're not supposed to really
Yeah.
interact.
Right.
We're supposed to only interact or direct you to do stuff, so.
Yeah.
They're looking forward to it.
I mean, they
I've
could
talked
meet,
I've talked to multiple staff, they are so appreciative of the fact that you're doing this. They can't wait. They're hoping that they can get a shift off desk during this lunch, because the library's still running, and so it's always kind of a crapshoot who comes and who has to be working. And that's all the libraries are running at the same time. So there will be staff who will be joining from remotely. There will be staff probably in this building who join remotely. And then there will be probably, I don't know, what we usually have in the room, 20 or 30 staff in the room with you. The majority of staff will probably participate virtually. And then some who are scheduled on the desk can't wait to watch it on tape. So we're taping it.
and we're gonna be in the Canyon Theater,
No,
No,
in
it'll be
Boulder
in the-
Creek Room.
Boulder Creek Room, okay.
So they're looking forward to it.
Okay.
And before you go, one other thing that's related to this, so we added a couple things to the advance agenda related to this. One, on the 27th, we're going to have a presentation from the library's equity and diversity team.
Okay.
We'll be looking at the city's equity plan and what the library has done, which has gone beyond the city in implementation. This is a really important thing for staff. We'll be hearing from them about it on Thursday. And Bonita and I thought it was important for us to hear that sooner rather than later, because it's probably going to be something we want to look at including in some of our employment package. So we've scheduled that for the 27th of June, and I think that's firm. And then on the 11th of July, I think the leadership team will be coming to us to talk about their initiatives and outreach and such. That's still tentative, but that's what we're aiming for also. Oh, the 18th, okay.
All right, yeah, I saw that.
Okay.
I'll attend the 27th virtually.
Yeah.
Out of town.
Just so you know, so trying to get more opportunity to hear from them early.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Doug.
Sorry.
Could I ask a question? Sorry, could I ask a question related to the IGA document or related to staff? One of the things I remember David Gear saying in the first meeting is that the interim IGA document said like basically three things. The city would operate the library, we would reimburse them at some point, and that the city would also retain the library's employees, not just its director. Do we need to explicitly call that out in the interim IGA document? That the employees are also going to be, or is that implicit in the, like, they will continue to operate the library?
I think it's implicit in that, ultimately what we're gonna have is a transition process for bringing the employees over. And basically it's a letter from you offering a job to each of the employees and a letter from them terminating their position.
Okay,
So I don't know if you want to, the problem with saying they'll retain the staff is then I don't know who's out there. There may be people trying to leave. There may be people on kind
Okay,
of probation, and but as long as they're operating the library appropriately, that's, I think, what you care about. And then on
Okay.
the day of the transition, everybody will move over.
And it
okay,
will
I
be-
just wanted to make sure we didn't forget
Will
that.
be in the full IGA, Jen.
Okay,
Will be in the full IGA about that provision that they would be offered, whatever it happens to be, their current jobs, their current titles, their current salaries, whatever, to the extent possible.
okay. Okay, thank you.
To move on?
I had a question about 2.4.5,
Yes.
and I know you said this section might get revised, but it says that the district will propose a contract to Farnon, and then it says upon authorization by the city.
Yeah.
Of what?
These preceding code issues that he has to.
Okay, can we say that out? We sort of spell that out?
Yep.
Because otherwise it sounds like we get to propose a contract to Farnon with the city's approval, which isn't really what we're getting at.
So authorization by the city under these two.
Yeah, it's just something, yeah.
Either are those municipal codes or are they?
City code of conduct,
So just.
it is,
Okay, that's
it's the ethics section.
okay, get that in there. Paragraph 3, obligations and responsibilities of the district. That 3.1 again sets that statute that lists all of your powers. 3.2, general obligations. You can work with the city to provide the best library service as possible. In other words, don't interfere with the city's process and help out where we can, reciprocally. 3.3, this provision was actually sent to me, not in this exact form, but by the city's finance department. And I was tempted to just take the numbers out of there too. I don't know. I'm concerned about taking the numbers out of it, but go up, not down. So
So what the city sent was that we would reimburse them for this amount, and I suggested we change that to say they've requested reimbursement and the final amounts will be determined in the IGA. But I think there's merit in having the numbers in there for two reasons. One, at the staff and mid-management level, there's been a lot of, we're keeping hours so we can get the bill. So this will send the message that, no, we're not doing it that way. And then I think if this is in the interim, that also kind of creates a cap. So that'd be my thinking on the numbers.
and then we just say that, we'll determine whether, how much. Paragraph 4, November 30th deadline for completion of the final IGA. We can change that to 31st.
Yes, let's do, because we definitely want to get it before this council. And I don't know what their last meeting is. That might be worth checking.
But October, yeah,
Because they're in session, I think, for a week or so after
Yeah.
the election.
yeah. And election day's the 7th, and then they might meet on the 9th. But
Yeah, so
Then-
October 31st, I think, would be a good thing to shoot for. Halloween.
yeah, it's a special day in Boulder, so, you know,
It is.
that's
Is it?
really.
What a great birthday to have.
And then we just have the additional terms, some of which Doug mentioned that I removed. That's it. It's pretty straightforward.
But it's, I'm curious for you to see how, normally, 3.3 came about, is that something that David, you're putting into the thing, you said that, you got an email from finance saying that's what the money was.
Yeah, so David had asked them, I don't remember what his question was, but this is what came back. And it was actually the language for the interim IGA, but I redid it, so. But it essentially said this, and it said the district will reimburse. curious.
Nice try.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be a problem having this, but we'll see.
So did we agree that we would keep these numbers in here?
I think so, unless you
cost
can think of a reason not to.
Yes, but with the revision about
The final reimbursement,
about
yeah,
requesting reimbursement as
Yeah.
opposed to,
Yeah,
committing to
agreeing to it,
reimbursement, yeah.
yeah.
That's it.
I had a quick question about I didn't totally understand where we landed on the county's little IGA. What did we
Great segue.
say what we were doing about that?
I'll take that up tomorrow. I think the decision was I would contact the county and just draft up like a one-page IGA addressing the one thing that they have anything to do with.
Right.
And
Right.
send it over. And then we'll
Okay,
see.
perfect.
So it'll
Okay.
just say, we're extending the time period for the final IGA and here's your issue. We'll see what they say.
We're
Okay,
considering that the final IGA, the only IGA with the county.
It'll address the only issue they have, so I don't think we need to call it an interim.
Yeah, and I think that may require some process with city council, because city council and the county commissioners have to agree on the appointment process. So, yeah.
Yeah, I wonder, would it make sense to call the county one an interim IGA?
No.
No. The appointment process.
Yeah, because we want to just do that.
Okay.
So I think if you could start it and then give it to the city, and then the city can work with the county. I did call the mayor this weekend and gave him a heads up that this was coming. Chris Meschuk had briefed him about the interim IGA coming up on the 15th, but he hadn't talked to him about the county IGA, and we talked a little bit about the appointment process. And I just said, you guys are going to have to figure it out. So, yeah.
We have some strong feelings about that process because we've litigated it 3 times.
Yeah.
But, so we'll draft it our way,
Okay.
which basically is you decide who replaces you. You tell them, and they appoint or they don't. If they don't appoint, you decide who goes back to them next. Because we had Douglas County, Arapahoe County, and Weld County, and Elbert County try to take over the library board, county commissioners. And we were successful in 3 lawsuits, but they just keep coming back. As soon as the Board of County Commissioners turns over, they start trying to eat away at the library boards. So I'll draft it that way, give it to David and Janet, and then let's see where it goes.
Okay, and maybe give them that background also as to
Yeah,
why you
the
recommend that.
statute's very badly written.
Yeah.
But, so we tried to flesh it out for the patient. So far, where it's worked, it's worked.
And then the other issue for them may be the reimbursement of the election costs.
So when we met with the city manager last week, we'd asked her to communicate with the county. So did she communicate with the county, or was that just your communication with the county or with the city related to the county's IGA?
My conversation with the city was just that we were going to do a separate idea with the county, just their issue.
Okay.
And they said, that's fine.
Okay,
They
I just
kinda
wondered
said it-
if-
They kind of said it like, good luck with that.
Okay.
I don't think it's for.
Okay, because we had raised that with Nuria and we thought it was appropriate that she communicate with the county or that Chris, county staff. I just wondered if they did.
She might have, because somehow it came back to me that they want that, the reimbursement for the,
Okay,
Yeah.
so somebody.
so maybe
Yeah.
it wasn't, maybe county commissioner, maybe staff to staff. Okay, I was just curious if it had flowed or if it, yeah. It didn't. That's all.
Communications facilitation.
Indeed.
So Kim, on this IGA with the county then, you will draft it and send it on to the city and wordsmith with them and then bring it to us?
Yeah, let me see what the city attorneys want to do with it.
Yeah.
I'd like you to see that process. Knowing, and I'll show you why the statute is just that. It uses words like ratified, but if it's not ratified, it's not a valid appointment. It's a mess. So I'm trying to clean it up step by step.
That'd be helpful.
What's the approximate dollar amount of the reimbursement for the election?
We don't know. I'm
Oh.
guessing it's probably on the range of $80,000, but we don't know.
Now, somewhere between 1,600.
And they can ask for all or part. I don't personally think it's worth hassling with them over it, given where they were on the resolution, but that's something we can discuss when we see what they're asking for. Some counties have only asked for half, so.
What do you think would be fair?
I think what would be fair is to get out of the county not mess with them, just to get out of their clutches as quickly as we can. Not give them any reason to try and engage us on other things. And I think it is fair to pay it. I mean, if we were to do an election on our own, we would pay those election costs. Every special district pays their share of the election costs, so it's not an inequitable thing for the library district to do.
And as far as the appointment process goes, there are two districts in Boulder County, Lyons and Benton. I don't believe one of them. It's the appointees are sent to me, but you should check and see. I think that's why they have those.
The appointees are what?
I think it's as you described.
Okay.
That the Board of Trustees nominates a person, they send it, and the county has a choice to either that.
And High Plains technically as well, so are in here as well. Cool, so we're good with this interim IGA, and we'll see a version that has probably some revisions to those city code of conduct things next week, and then again, look at approving that through a resolution or motion.
I'll make those changes, get it over to them first thing in the morning.
Super. Super. That was short and sweet.
Yes.
Yeah, big steps. Big steps. Well, then, the next thing on the agenda is subcommittee updates. We just added this as a standing item, since that seems like it's a good opportunity to update one another on what's going on. I think everyone has, I think all of the subcommittees have gotten together with David this week to talk about how we're getting started and what we're scheduling. So does somebody want to kick off anything to discuss on where we are? One request I would have on the advanced planning agenda that I sent around today, I think it would be helpful if we could just get a general idea of what time frame you guys are targeting to try and meet with the city and library staff. In most cases, I suspect we'll want to wait until the consultants we're hiring come on board, because we're going to put them in the room with us. We want them in the room with us when we hear these presentations. But there may be opportunities to do something before we get the consultants on board. If you look at the lists, Doug and I on facilities looked at the list of information and realized about half of the information items on our list have to do with ongoing maintenance, which has nothing to do with the IGA. That's just a matter of educating us for budget purposes. So we're going to try to schedule that set of information here in the next couple weeks if we can, and then do the capital maintenance backlog, which is the IGA piece, later in July, probably after the middle of July, when we think we have consultants on board. So you guys might think about that kind of an approach in your scheduling as well, if it makes sense.
Johnny, how did you want us to collaborate on this document? Do you want us to just send you directly the items, or did you want to make it like an open Google Doc where we could just directly add in like staffing subcommittees doing X, Y, and Z in these weeks?
I would love to do an open Google Doc, but I think that gets us into trouble because then we
Okay.
look like we're doing a meeting. So
Okay,
I
okay,
think, yeah, I think you have to send it to me
okay.
and we'll, yeah, for now.
Fair enough, fair enough.
Yeah. So anything to report on? And if you don't, that's fine. I just thought that, you know, the notion that I had for this, and you can see if this makes sense to you, is this is an opportunity for us just to do verbal, informal updates of what's going on. When something rises to the level of a recommendation that you guys have, then I think we should make that a formal agenda item, table it for action. But just to keep us generally informed about what's going on, this is an opportunity for us just to share any information we think is relevant.
You want me to report first?
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if the folks on the screen wanted to, but Benita and I met with David yesterday to talk about communications and IGA subcommittee. I thought it was really helpful. We got a lot of really good background on kind of to what extent there has been or is communications and marketing and engagement focus happening from the library as it is. And then how we would want to change that or not change that going forward. So I think our kind of, what we're going to kind of focus on, I think, is going to be, communicating what the trustees are doing, that we exist, that we're getting going, just kind of in a general sense, communications. At some point we'll start thinking about marketing and what marketing might look like from a library district and also library perspective. And then I think importantly, the third sort of prong would be deal with like engagement and outreach kinds of issues. So to be thinking about, how do we engage with the community? How do we reach out to the community? We had some discussion about how we reach out to specific subsets of the community. So for example, folks who aren't part of the library, or people, I don't know how to word this, people who are live in the city, but who are now part of the district. So folks like me who didn't used to, pay into the library and now they do. So we talked about how we might start to do that. So I think at some point, and I didn't write down, but we will be talking about engaging consultants to help us put together kind of a comprehensive communications outreach and marketing plan for the library district. And so that's something that we think, because right now there's not really that in existence, and so we're not building from existing plans, and so we're really going to kind of need something comprehensive from some experts. But we're going to start with the communications folks in the city. We're going to ask to meet with them to get some of their advice and some of their perspective on these types of issues and strategies. So we're going to start with them and eventually engage consultants for the board of trustees to work on a more comprehensive plan. And we talked about kind of some kind of this summer we talked about that we would do some press releases, something initially introducing the city and the community to the board of trustees. We talked about doing some updates maybe later in the summer, and then of course doing updates on a press release when we start the IGA negotiations to just to keep people informed about what's going on. What am I missing?
I would just add a couple things. One, that the consultant and that process of engagement is intended to fold into budget process. And so, into budget considerations for 2024, hopefully, or 2025. But it would be a role that would help shape a strategic plan that relates to communications for the district. And then I think for me, one of the changes from a month ago and just thinking about this communications piece was recognizing or hearing that the city would have a role and the city staff would help support press releases and communication. Because initially I was hearing that we were like on our own, right? And we would need a communications person or persons or a team to just help with sort of that out-facing external communication of this group and of the district. And And now it sounds like that there's, just more of a collaborative effort with city staff being engaged in.
Yeah, and there's some, there's some existing tools we can leverage. We talked about the library newsletter, and we talked about press
Yeah.
releases from the city. So there's
Yeah.
sort of existing channels that we can leverage for some of this initial types of communicating.
Yeah, and so it sort of changed the shape of what that consultant scope is going to be for me, so it's clear now, clearer on that front, so good.
So in my experience, the city staff is helpful on the putting out information side, so the press releases and the newsletter and such. It's the engagement side that there's not much there. I mean, you remember on LDAC, we made a whole set of recommendations about engagement and what that form of engagement should go, and it just didn't go anywhere. So just something to think about going forward. I think that's where probably we need to be looking for different resources, at least based on past experience.
Yeah, and that was part of our discussion yesterday.
So the LDAC engagement list that you're describing, I'd like to see that.
It's part of the LDAC recommendation. So
Yeah.
if you just pull out the LDAC recommendation memo, there's a whole list of recommendations we made for outreach,
Okay.
for what it was worth. Great, thanks. Jan, do you have anything to report on staffing? I think you guys met also, didn't you?
We did not.
Oh, okay.
We're meeting tomorrow.
Okay,
So that is the update.
That's great.
We're going to try to do a regular in-person meeting on Wednesday mornings, and we'll get the first download from David tomorrow.
okay, good. And just an update from Sam, he's been texting me, his wife, they're not sending her home yet, so he won't be joining us tonight, but hopefully she's gonna be okay and out of things right now, so. And Sylvia, we talked a little bit about next week with the banking and finance thing coming. Sylvia and I are meeting on Friday to look over potential bylaws and such, and we hope to have a package for everybody next week.
Yep.
We'll see if we get that far.
Yeah, and then Jen and David and I also met for the budget and finance subcommittee. And that was really just more, I mean, Jen and I are just trying to unpack the budget and the line items and just trying to understand, how we're going to be able to kind of support the development of the budget, and just trying to really wrap our heads around what each of those items are, what are the unknowns at this point. So I felt like it was a really productive meeting that we had last Friday. So, we got the ball rolling. Not sure where we're headed, but we got the ball rolling.
That's
Yeah,
great.
just to add on to that, David gave us a kind of high level overview on the types of things he would need the full board input on eventually. Things like board reserves, and other line items. And we also talked quite a bit actually about engaging a consultant as well on the financial side to build a model that will allow David and Jennifer and team to kind of move variables around to see how they might impact the budget based on decisions we make and priorities we make for the finances once we get a hold of those. So yeah, it was a great conversation.
And you guys feel like you have a scope pretty much for that consultant laid out?
I think the part that you did allude to, Jennifer, is the public presentation of the budget, right? So it is a communications tool to a certain extent, and tells a lot about what we're doing. And so the scope that we're looking for would entail how the budget is both presented to the board and how it might be available to the public in some manner or another in a kind of a dashboard format, so that you could use that tool to communicate with the public. So, I think it's a good scope. I think we're ready to go. I've talked already to a couple of consultants. There's interest.
It's great. And Doug and I met with David on facilities and went through the large pile of paper for what it's worth. We decided also that we should bring in a consultant and got a scope for that. And the focus for the facilities consultant will be to help us to understand what the ballpark cost is for the capital maintenance backlog. We have a wide range of numbers, basically ranging from $3 million to $8 million. Although the $8 million includes a lot of ongoing maintenance, and so that needs to be sorted out. And we just need to get a better understanding of how big this bill is and how urgent the items are. The city has a software program that we've asked if we can get them to give us a printout or a readout of what they have in their software program, organized by facility and by urgency. And then hopefully we can get a facilities person who can do a walkthrough and look through some of these things and advise us on costing, someone who's more up to speed on what costs are now versus some of the kind of back of the envelope stuff. Because we just need an order of magnitude. I mean, we're both Doug and I are concerned that the $3 million or so that the city has been putting out is really probably double that or more. So
you've seen some of these numbers before, and has anything jumping out at you has significantly changed or
well, that's
more of
one
an issue now than was a year ago or two?
That's one of the things that's challenging. We have these documents, we have a 2005 study of Carnegie, and then we have a 2009 study that very high level looked at all the buildings, and then a 2015 update that just looked at parts of Maine. And we don't know, looking through those, what's been done and what hasn't. We know some things have been done and some haven't. But then there's also been things coming up. Looking at a preliminary run from the city's software program in terms of what they have identified as urgent or high priority, it looks like there's about $1 million, mostly in Maine North Building, Reynolds and Carnegie. So, for us, the urgent and high priority, we're probably going to have to plan to deal with soon. If it's medium or low, then we can look at it over time, and that's why we want to get some sense of priority and urgency. We expect that after the IGA is completed, we'll engage someone to do a thorough facilities study to really go into the buildings and help us understand where they're at. In the long run, I think for the board, not now, but 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, you're probably going to have to be looking at some of these buildings. Does it make sense to keep maintaining them, or is it time to do renovation or replacement? Just like the city's looking at the rec centers right now, because Carnegie, Reynolds, and I think the North Building are all past their effective lifespan at this point. And so maintenance costs are really, really high. So we just need to get a better ballpark now for the IGA purposes so we can discuss with them who's responsible for what and that sort of thing.
The facilities staff of the city, has there been turnover there recently? Somebody maybe said that to you, maybe it was you.
There has been, so, yeah. So the manager of, who had been looking at citywide resources from that vantage point of like the cost, he's gone, he left 2 months ago. So that's unfortunate, but we'll get somebody from the city who's knowledgeable to come in. If we hire an independent consultant, if we're able to hire an independent consultant in a timely fashion, they can also advise the board about the buildings, because that's one, as well as the finance to a certain extent, because you want to be able to quickly go in and assess the impact of ideas that you're considering in the IGA. But one of the biggest ones is the buildings. And so I agree. We're gonna do the best we can to bring on a consultant as quickly as we possibly can. And so, a lot of it will be availability, I think. There are good companies out there. I spoke to 3 today. Like the availability of them to be having a recommendation for you prior to IGA negotiations is not an easy feat. That is going to present a challenge to any of them. They're going to have to move resources around and personnel, because they're not sitting around waiting for work. They're working now.
And to give a sense of context, David, I think you said that based on what we think we know about costs for maintenance, it's basically 25% of our budget to maintain the building.
Yeah, this is, I mean, that's the larger consideration, which we brought up in the finance committee and we will need to keep talking about. So, the percentage of our budget that is going into maintaining facilities is completely out of whack with any other library and any other business metrics that anybody would look at, right? It's very high. Some of that is because of our buildings' age. They are old buildings and they have not been well maintained over the course of this time, but how aggressive you want to be in the maintenance schedule will be a thing that we're all talking about, I think, over the course of the next year or two, because the question has to be where the end game lies, right? You can, you got an old car, the bills don't go away and they don't get less in money. Like you keep fixing up the old car, you're going to still have something else that's going to go wrong next year. So we'll have to look at all that when we sit down. But that's more of in line with the long-term strategy, which we would hire for once the IGA is complete, right? So we will hire a facilities master plan. We'll come to a level of agreement with the board about the schedule for doing certain things, and also then a plan for potentially replacement and or fully renovating facilities in a manner which matches your resources. That will be the objective of it. Right now, it's a matter of the negotiations, and you need to know what it is you are either taking ownership of or leasing and or agreeing to when you agree to all of the maintenance costs associated with these buildings. And I don't know the number. The city has repeatedly quoted around 3 million. That's in addition to the perhaps 500,000 to $1 million in costs that are going into annual maintenance, right? Ordinary costs. And so when it gets all said and done, we've got a lot of money tied up in building maintenance. The only libraries that are even remotely similar, and they're less than us, are those libraries that are heavily debt financed. And so they use debt financing, they consider that building maintenance, but essentially they've got 5 new buildings which have low operational costs, but because they have debt financing, it's showing that it's about 20% of their budget. The 20% of their budget is the high end across the state. And there's only 2 libraries that I know that are in that range. We're well over that already, and we haven't come up with a plan for how to address the maintenance back. So it's complicated. I mean, and something that's a big think that we're all going to have to do together in conjunction with a consultant that can offer options for what the board might be willing to do.
Yeah. Remind me, what's the value of the assets of all the libraries? Did the city put a?
Oh, the total dollar amount? Do you remember what that was? Around 60 million, I think, buildings. And, this building is the majority of it. And the grounds, really, the property itself that this building sits on is not something that the district would ever get the city, I think, to part with. I can't remember. It's how many figures? 8 figures? Yeah, it's 20 million. The land.
Yeah.
So you're not, the buildings, but if you look at Reynolds and Carnegie, the valuations are in that, $3 to $4 million range for the buildings and the land.
Mhm.
And the known maintenance backlog of things to do nearly matches that for those 2 buildings. Novo is brand new and coming online. The building cost is about $12 million. There has been no discussion of the ownership of the land, but that's an issue that will come up in the IGA, because I think the city's desire is to subdivide it. My personal opinion is that it's in your interest to subdivide the property because we don't want to maintain a 3.5 acre site that we don't really have control over. But that's something for you to consider. But the building itself won't have any initial maintenance cost. It's just the ongoing cost of facilities operation. The other buildings are ones we lease. So Meadows and Nobo Corner Library are leased facilities. The Nobo one is on a year-to-year. The Meadows lease expires in 2029. And those are for $1 a year each.
Although there are maintenance costs and common area costs.
Yeah, there are significant, there are not
ongoing.
insignificant costs around Meadows. Yeah.
Good. Gosh, we're so efficient. Anything else from subcommittees? Okay, well, trustee matters. The only thing I have is to nag anybody who hasn't sent their bios in, to get their bios in to Jennifer. Or Celia. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so one of the best, if I may, one of the best things we can do from a communications point of view early on is to introduce the Board of Trustees to the community. And your bios are probably the best way for you to do that. And so please do the bios and, think of it as like, this is the way you're introducing yourself to the community. We'll probably come out with a press release sometime soon about like who all these wonderful volunteers are and their passion about the library and wouldn't you like to be a volunteer too? And here's all the other volunteer opportunities in the library. So we'll tie it in so that's not simply about the Board of Trustees, but it's a way of kind of making that introduction so that you can begin, I think in the way you desire to form beginnings of some type of relationship with the community. And I think that's a critical kind of first step in this, in the communication strategy.
We agreed with these website bios though, that we're almost kind of giving like a statement about, like it's like a mission statement kind of thing, not like a true bio, right? Isn't that what we asked?
Yeah.
That's because it was like what was it, the half of so
Yeah, there was one that was very sort of serious and,
we wanted to do it more like
more lighthearted.
Arapaho.
More like Arapaho, yeah, more lighthearted. And I think several people have sent them in and sort of, 3, okay.
Okay, I haven't.
Forgot. Okay. Okay. Well, we're so efficient. Should we stay with our 5 o'clock start next week, or should we push it back to 6? I mean, we've been setting aside 3 hours thinking we needed a lot of time to get into things, and we haven't needed them last week or this.
What is next?
Next week is the 13th, so we'll be, yeah, we'll have financial policy that's new to you, the banking, and then approving these 2 documents that we went over tonight. I think that's the majority of it. If we have bylaws, that may be some discussion.
So maybe starting at 6, or are you thinking? this
I'm
might
just
be-
asking if
Okay.
people want us to leave it at 5 or move it back to 6. I'm the one who's really flexible, so it's up to you working folks.
I prefer 6 for this next one. Sure. Just because the other days are really busy and could use just.
It is a little easier for me in general to make 6 because I can wrap up the workday and feed my children and then come down. But I'm remote for the next few, so I'm generally easy
Okay, well,
for
I'm seeing a
those.
lot of nods for 6.
So but we plan on 6 to 8 or?
Yeah, well, let's plan on 6 to 8, and then with the understanding that if it runs a little long next week, okay.
Yeah.
But we've been so efficient, I don't know that we're gonna need the time. It's a good group.
So I had one more trustee matter. So I'm just bringing along my map to every meeting because I just think it's important.
And just as a comment, I think there was some confusion. The map that we intended to be here is actually in the main lobby on the easel. We had actually thought we wanted a map in this room, and
Yeah.
it got stuck up there with the
That was me.
notice. Yeah.
But if we had it in here, that would be great since we were meeting here, but otherwise I've been, but while I was doing that, I was like in my office and I just brought this along, it's like, because I think, so this is the open space, their 50th anniversary, poster, right? And so, I mean, I just begin to think about the library district and how important it is, and just begin to think about maybe, some way to just recognize the district, right? And so just, because it is as important to the community as open spaces to the community and the investment that we made decades ago related to that. And so I just brought it because it was just the thought that we, somewhere along the line, I just think it's important that we have some poster, some representation of the formation of the library district and some visual that represents what it really means to the community. So You know, and maybe there's a way to involve artists in that, or Building 61 in some way or something.
I love that.
Yeah,
I think it's a great idea.
You know, just as a marker, right, of this time, because it's special, and I'm gonna keep saying that because it's special. It's unique and doesn't happen all the time, and that's why we're here, because we like these kind of challenges. So anyway, I just brought that along just as a reminder of what we should be thinking about. Okay.
Oh, I stuck my public notice.
Find something. Well, there's a background.
Yeah,
We're
so,
not required to post a paper copy if it's on the website, right?
Yeah, now that we've got our website, we can now do that.
but I would put it someplace, I mean, because I think it's important that people know, you know, it's happening, right? Like back to my little poster thing, right? Like it's,
I think if we have 15 minutes, in the first meeting, we talked about exactly that, to keep posting a hard copy, just so that people see it.
yeah. Get some twinkling lights and all that going. Anyway,
Your pictures,
yeah,
twinkling lights.
yeah. A hologram of you.
Yeah, right, shaking hands. Like, come.
He's the city. No, he's the district. Which is he today? What hat is he wearing?
A glitchy hologram.
Well, I think on that note, I'm going to adjourn the meeting.
Okay. The imagery is too
Thank
much,
you,
right?
everybody.